Hello everyone, today we will be discussing Chapter 8, Culture, and Chapter 9, Social Structure and Institutions. In Chapters 8, we examine the case study of Stan and Tina, both from Newark, New Jersey, community high school, but they both have different backgrounds. Stan comes from a white background with a working class, and Tina is described as someone coming from an African American background with financial struggles in comparison to Stan. Their story examines how cultural background and societal expectations shape their lives and opportunities. They come from different socioeconomic and cultural backgrounds, which influence their behaviors, their values, and their challenges. This case study explores how cultural norms dictate their gender roles, their career path, and family expectations. Now, when we look into the opening questions, how does culture produce variations in human behavior? Culture influences beliefs, values, and behaviors based on their societal norms, as we saw in both different people, Stan and Tina. Different cultural expectations shaped how individuals perceive success, relationships, and work. Question number 2, how does culture produce and maintain social inequality? Social structures and norms reinforce disparities and opportunities, often favoring dominant groups, as we saw here. Systemic issues such as discrimination, access to quality jobs perpetuate inequality for marginalized communities. And question number 3, how do members of non-dominant groups respond to the dominant culture? Some conform to dominant norms to gain acceptance and success, kind of like we saw with Stan. Others resist and create their own culture spaces and identities, how we saw with Tina. Stan and Tina's struggles reflect their pressures of adapting while facing systemic barriers. Now, in Chapter 9, we learned about Leticia Renteria. She is a 30-year-old undocumented immigrant from Mexicali, Mexico, who moved to California in search of better economic opportunities. She's married to Marcos. He is a lawful permanent resident, and they have 3 young children, but they work low-wage seasonal jobs in agriculture. So when it comes to the opening questions, what are the key social institutions that give pattern to social life? Family, for example, economy, education, government, and laws. In this story, we see that Leticia and Marcos worked very hard to support their children despite those financial struggles. Economy, they have low-wage jobs and lack of labor opportunities. Education, we see that with them, they have language barriers, and intimidation prevents Leticia and Marcos from engaging their children in schools. And then government and laws, we also see towards the end of that case study that immigration policies create significant obstacles for Leticia in seeking legal status in this country. Question number 2, what are the major global and U.S. trends in each of these social institutions? Economic inequality is growing with stagnant wages for low-income workers like Leticia. Immigration policies continue before and now, even more so, continue to create barriers for undocumented individuals, as seen in her Leticia's poor living conditions. And environmental injustice disproportionately impacts low-income communities. And question number 3, what are the positions in the contemporary debate about social inequality? Some argue that individuals must work harder and take personal responsibility for their success. However, others emphasize that systemic barriers, advocating for policy changes such as higher minimum wages, immigration reform, and labor protections, which would significantly help Leticia's family. Leticia's case demonstrates how structural inequalities, not personal choices, often determine outcomes for marginalized individuals. So this is a brief summary of these 2 chapters, different stories, but we see the inequalities in both of these stories and their own struggles. That is all. Thank you so much.